Hey there, Legal Tea listeners. This is your host, Jenny Roselle. We are back to estate planning of the rich and famous, where we chat about celebrities and their estate planning. The last two episodes of this topic of estate planning of the rich and famous, we talked about Michael Jackson and Kobe Bryant. So those were the last two episodes of this topic. And as you may remember, both of the gentlemen did a relatively okay job. They both slipped up and each had their own respective mistake, but from a 50,000-foot overview, they could have done way worse. With today's episode, we are coming to a screeching halt on halfway decent estate planning because today's spotlight is on someone who did not do a fabulous job at estate planning. And who is that someone? It is Miss Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul, but she is not going to be called the Queen of Estate Planning. So let's dive in. Actually, before I do so, I have to confess something. As I started writing this episode, I was working from home and the house was super quiet. My basset hounds were sleeping, and it was so quiet that I honestly wanted to join them. I was like, oh, why don't I turn on some Aretha Franklin while I write this? And I did just that. It was the greatest and worst idea ever. Greatest because it instantly bettered my mood. I felt like I was at like a wedding or something, and all I really wanted to do was jump up and dance. And the worst idea ever also because this episode probably took entirely too long to write. Longer to write than others since I was very busy bobbing my head and dancing in my seat. So back to Aretha, less about me dancing. So according to Aretha's Wikipedia page, Aretha canceled a variety of concerts in 2010 to have surgery for a tumor. And later in 2011, she actually denied that it was pancreatic cancer, though she continued to cancel various concerts and appearances in 2011 due to medical treatment. It was not until actually 2013 and 2014 that she really got back to live performing. In February 2017, Aretha stated that year, 2017, would be the final year of touring for her. And really, the next thing we hear from her is that in mid-2018, Aretha was gravely ill and under hospice care at her home in Detroit, Michigan. Then, on August 16th, 2018, Aretha Franklin passed away. It is reported that her official cause of death was a malignant pancreatic neuroendocrine tumor. Say that 5 times fast. And actually, according to the Neuroendocrine Tumor Research Foundation, there actually are differences between pancreatic cancer and this type of tumor Aretha had. And I actually put a link to the foundation's page which explains the differences. And that can be found in this episode's source links on our website. At the time of her passing, it was reported that Aretha Franklin passed away without a will. However, according to the website personalfamilylawyer.com, multiple wills, some were even handwritten and barely legible, multiple wills actually got discovered since her passing, which ultimately created a big old fight between Aretha's 4 children. The 4 children's names are Clarence, Edward, Ted White Jr., and Kecalf. And I hope I didn't mispronounce that last name. Kecalf, Kecalf. The Personal Family Lawyer website perfectly, I think, describes kind of what happened after Aretha passed away. It says, quote, "The legendary singer's haphazard planning has pitted brother against brother, exposed dark family secrets, and lost millions of dollars to the IRS. And perhaps, worst of all, While the legendary singer was notoriously private, all of this has played out in the news headlines for the whole world to see. So after Aretha's passing, but before those wills were actually discovered, Aretha's sons agreed to have their cousin, named Sabrina Owens, served as the estate's executor, which technically she would be executrix since she's a female, but I digress. For clarification, Sabrina would have been Aretha's niece. At that point, none of them knew any wills existed, or even the quasi-handwritten wills. So the estate was filed as an intestate probate case, which means the person, Aretha, passed away without a will and estate plan. The intestacy laws state that Aretha's estate would be distributed equally to her 4 children. As part of her role of executrix, Sabrina was at Aretha's house getting it cleaned out, and that's when the wills were discovered. Well, they started getting discovered since there were more than one. According to Our Detroit magazine, 2 wills were discovered in a locked cabinet and were dated in 2010. And another one, which was dated in 2014, was, get this, found on a notebook under her sofa cushions. I can't even make this stuff up, people. It was about 9 months after Aretha had passed away, and the intestate probate case had already been filed. So I'm sure Sabrina had a moment where she thought to herself, what in the absolute heck happens now? What was crazy, like things could get any more crazy, but they do, I promise, was that each will contained different provisions. Like the 2010 version provided all 4 sons in, quote, regular allowances, which, okay, what does that mean? And designated Sabrina, her niece, and her son, Ted, as co-executors. However, the 2014 version leaves her assets to her 3 youngest sons and left it to them to distribute to their oldest brother, Clarence. So, side note, I see clients do this often. You see, Clarence is what special needs, so a lot of people call them special needs, and for some sort of possible cognitive or physical impairment, and they just need a little help with things. And so Clarence with special needs lived in a group home in Detroit. And I'm sure Aretha was wanting to protect Clarence's inheritance from kind of negatively impacting him, so she thought the other boys could just take care of it. Let me say this loud and clear. There are multiple ways that individuals with special needs can inherit that will not negatively impact them, but it will also still allow you to leave their inheritance to them for their benefit. So Aretha could have done that. Instead, this 2014 will version left everything to her 3 youngest kids, sort of trusting they'd share it with Clarence. Let's see how that plays out. I've heard that before, and I've seen that not play out well. But thankfully, Clarence is represented by a court-appointed attorney, so hopefully that attorney will be well advocating for him. Remember how I quoted from that personalfamilylawyer.com article earlier that I thought perfectly encapsulated the unfortunate situation? And how I said all this, quote, exposed dark family secrets. Well, here's what I meant by that. One of the wills that was found disclosed something known to barely anyone. So Aretha gave birth to Clarence when she was a mere 12 years old. Up until its discovery, it was actually reported that Clarence's father was a friend of Aretha's named Donald Burke. And actually, one of the wills disclosed that Clarence's father was not Donald Burke. It was Edward Jordan Sr., who was also the father of Aretha's second child, Edward. Aretha was clearly not a fan of Edward Jordan Sr., and it's reported that Aretha actually put in her will, quote, "His father, Edward Jordan Sr., should never receive or handle any money or property belonging to Clarence or that Clarence receives, as he has never made any contribution to his welfare, future or past." Between all of this drama, Sabrina, the niece, decided to say, "Peace, I'm out," and decided to resign as executrix and said, quote, "The family feud is not what Aretha would have wanted for us." After Sabrina resigned, the court appointed attorney Reginald Turner, who happened to be a friend of Aretha. So the court appointed Reginald Turner as the executor now. And within these court filings regarding the executor role, the judge also scheduled a hearing for June 2020 to begin the conversation about whether any of these wills that were found would be valid and actually govern Aretha's estate. And wouldn't you know, according to personalfamilylawyer.com again, another will was found. But it was a draft copy and never signed. So after the 3 wills that were prepared by Aretha herself, she had actually went to hire an attorney in Detroit named Henry Grix in 2017 to help her with estate planning. Though, like I just said, it never got finished and signed. The contents, however, of the draft copies seem like a kind of like a combination of what all the other wills have stated. It's the draft copy, so the newest will that was discovered, stated her estate went equally to the boys, but actually ended up creating a trust for Clarence, the special needs child, which, by the way, is exactly what I would have done. So she created a trust for Clarence, had everything going to the 4 boys equally. So it sounds like she was on the right track. Though possibly in good news for the estate, there is a law in Michigan that actually will allow a deceased person's intent to be recognized even if the documents are defective in execution. So the lawyers for Clarence and Ted want that latest will to be carried through. So they've petitioned the court to see if the judge will allow it. It got set for a hearing for August 2021 to determine, of the 4 wills that had been discovered, which, if any, are going to be the one that stands and governs. So they set it for June. It got kicked to August. So this episode is so wild, I tell you, and I'm running out of time now. I always try to keep these episodes in the 15-minute-ish mark, but I'm not done. So according to the Detroit Free Press, it was also discovered that Aretha's estate also owed lots of money in unpaid taxes, interest, and penalties, to the tune of nearly $8 million. Yikes. As time passed, the estate started chipping away at the balance owed to the IRS, and come March 2021, a settlement was reached with the IRS, which I won't bore you with the numbers mainly because of time, but we get to the estate to a point where a payment was finally made to the children. So nothing had been going to the children all this time since she passed away. Finally made a payment to the children, 3 years after Aretha passed away. But hey, they also were fighting, so it was partially their fault too. As we sit today, the estate is still not cleaned up. It's still open, it's still pending. I actually, after looking for probably far too long, cannot see that August 2021 hearing happened to determine what will, if any, would stand and govern. And I'm recording this in October of 2021, so one would think that it would have occurred. So I started digging and I looked up the court case in Oakland County, Michigan, and I actually see that there's a hearing set for December 6th, 2021. So I wonder if that August 2021 hearing got continued to that December date. I bet it did, hence why there really is nothing new or updated on which will stood up. So I guess we just sit here and we wait because there is more to come on Aretha's estate. Well, there you go. We can learn a lot from old Aretha. You know how I try to utilize our legal T hashtag around here, hashtag do your estate plan, often on episodes. After all, it is important to hashtag do your estate plan. But can we agree that we aren't going to do our estate plan so often and on our own that it confuses everyone? I often tell clients, if you leave your estate behind a mess, or if you leave your people, like your beneficiaries and executors and trustees, confused, do you know who wins? It's people like me, lawyers, and it's things like the IRS. Two things you don't exactly want to win, or at least I don't. You can do you. You do you, boo. I choose to make sure my estate plan got created. Yes, it is done, for the record. It stays updated so that I don't leave my people confused when it's time to take over. Alrighty, let's wrap this episode up. Well, next week's topic is a cautionary tale, a real-life case I've personally worked on. And during that episode, we're actually going to be talking about a case where the estate plan was missing. Like the documents could not be found. And what the heck happens then if they're gone? So yeah, stay tuned for that one. Until then, Legal Tea listeners, take care and be well.